Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 3rd, 2018 meeting of the Board of Selectmen, Highway Commissioners, Cemetery Commissioners. First order of business, rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start our regularly scheduled agenda, we're going to ask for a moment of silence in memory of former President Bush, who passed away recently. Thank you, everyone. First up on the agenda is acceptance of minutes, November 19th, 2018. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes of November 19th, 2018 as written.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept as presented. Any questions or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Appointments and resignations, we have none. Public comments, citizen comments, informational, anybody wishing to be heard that are not on the agenda, please come forward at this time. Seeing none. Town Administrator's Report, Mr. Balkunas.
Board members, good evening. I just want to acknowledge that we did sell some of the surplus rails, and that resulted in revenue coming into the town of $49,960.92. I want to thank Mr. Paletta for his work and Mr. Guyon, who put together the bid specifications, so we put it out to bid. We sold it to a company up in New Hampshire, and I understand that they've come through and picked up the materials, and they're no longer on premises. So these monies go to the rail trail, which is typically the way that it's done. Questions about that? Vinny, you have anything else you want to add on that?
So, Greg, that's monies that'll be used to help maintain and,
Rail trail.
right, only.
Exactly. So it's only earmarked for rail trail. So we've already received the check, and we've earmarked it for the rail trail accounts.
So when people see the highway guys down there trimming brush and whatnot, please don't, you can call anytime you want, but understand it's not coming out of a general fund.
Correct.
It's coming out of rail trail funds.
That's exactly where it's coming from. And they see people doing the work on the weekends and stuff like that, which is the
You'll
only
get
thing.
comments sometimes.
Yes, we do.
Just a couple of other quick updates. Solar pilot agreement. So as you know, there's a project proposed for Oxford Avenue, about a little bit over a 4 megawatt facility up in that area. I understand that the applicants submitted a site plan approval special permit application to the planning board, but they've also contacted me about entering into a payment in lieu tax agreement. So typically the way that that's done is we get town meeting approval to negotiate the agreement, and then we present the negotiated agreement back to town meeting for its approval. Once town meeting approves, then the board signs off. But the good news is the developers expressed a willingness to do so. So that's good news. And then just the only other thing I had was I recently met with the personnel board, and a couple of policy updates have been either approved or being worked on. So the personnel board and I updated the sexual harassment policy. It's a really good policy that was written back in 2006, but we like to periodically update it for modern times, so it's been updated, and when we distribute it to employees, they'll get a copy of it. Personnel board has also asked me to update policies concerning pay adjustments and performance appraisals. So I think the performance appraisal is pretty much straightforward. It's a date and a calendar deadline that's involved, and the key point is if you don't get a performance appraisal done, you don't have eligibility for a merit increase, and you kind of got to firm that up. The pay adjustment policy has kind of come about as the fact that there are a lot of departments that come forward with pay adjustment requests. There's no uniform way of dealing with those requests, so establishing some sense of uniformity. So those are my updates, and I'll be back on a couple of other items on the agenda.
All right, Greg, and next time you talk to personnel too, I know how the merit process works, but can we have some maybe more defined, and is the merit above and beyond, accomplishing something above and beyond their stated goals?
No, so it's if typically if an employee meets expectations, they're eligible for a merit increase. So they don't need to exceed expectations or be an outstanding employee to be eligible for a merit increase. The maximum merit increase that employees can receive is 2%. That's set in stone and codified in the bylaws. So If someone meets expectations, generally they'll get an increase below 1% or in that range. If they exceed expectations, then they typically look at the higher increase, which is up to 2%.
So that's on top of like a normal
Cost of living
wage
increase.
adjustment, right?
Yeah, so what we do is we, as you know, at fall town meeting, we voted the merit pool. And what we will do is take all the performance reviews that have come in over the last month, couple months, and we will distribute those out to you, Mr. Chairman, and the chairman of the Personnel Board and myself, and we'll sit down and we'll have a discussion about each of those increases. Mr. Marcy's been present for that in years gone by, and I think we have a good discussion about every single employee, what they've accomplished, what their strengths are and weaknesses are, and then we make a recommendation that goes and is approved by the Personnel Board and by this board before it actually becomes finalized. I think that part of the system works out really well.
Okay, I know we have strong chiefs, but do you handle their self-evals? I know we get them, we look at them and vote, but you handle the
Yeah,
initial
so,
intake with them, right?
absolutely.
Okay. Any questions for the administrator? Good?
Very good.
When we budget for that, Greg, do we budget 2% across the board?
We do.
So there's,
So there's always a
so
little,
there's no intense scrutiny when you're giving out merit pay increases?
what we,
If you don't, if it's budgeted for 2%,
so just so you know, a year ago, no one received more than a 1% increase. So just because we budget 2% doesn't mean that non-union employees receive that amount. We handed out increases of 1% last year.
Okay.
So it depends on what the town's financial situation is and what our ability to pay, and then we come up with a joint recommendation before the board.
I see.
Greg, we've never exhausted the merit pool either, right? We've always.
No, because what we do is we try to roll it over from year to year. So I mentioned before about pay adjustments. So if there's a pay adjustment that's granted and someone says, what's a pay adjustment? That's one-time increase based upon additional responsibilities or duties, based upon what the person's market value is in comparison to other communities, similar job. So if there's a pay adjustment, we take that pay adjustment out of the merit pool also. And that avoids us having to go to town meeting and create a cumbersome situation, but we'll roll that amount over every year. And depending upon what we have before us, the amount will go up and down.
Perfect. Everybody good? John? License and permits, we have none. Public hearing, we have none. Public business. A, Board of Health, permission to use Clorinda Wood Fund, the amount of $63 to pay the Harrington Memorial Hospital for Health Service, October 2018.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second by Mr. Sigenovich and Mr. Massey. Any further questions? Hearing none. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Paula Lane Circle Drive discussion tabled from the previous meeting at the request of Mr. Joseph, who's not present. But the folks are here, so we can continue the discussion.
Sure. Mr. Chairman and board members, so there's a letter that I would have sent out to everyone apprising them of the road betterment bylaw that was approved back in May of 2016, and giving them an idea of what the road betterment bylaw consists of and what their obligations would be as residents. Since then, I've had communication with a couple of the residents down that area about the betterment program. But the betterment program provides that the residents would pay for the cost of the road improvement, and then the cost of that would be divided up over a number of years and paid for up to 25 years. The maximum that the town can charge those residents is 2% above the going interest rate that the town charges on any money that we borrow, and we typically borrow money at a pretty low rate. So it's a good deal. It gets apportioned and put onto their tax bill. When properties are sold, then the betterment would be paid. So if someone sells a home and they say what happens, the betterment gets paid at that time. So I sent it out, and
I'm sorry, just, it's paid.
it's paid. It's so,
Through a
it's-
lien, or?
yeah, so there's a lien that's put on the property, and through the closing process, the lien is identified and the lien gets paid.
Okay.
Before I open the conversation, I know one of the issues that the acting superintendent brought up last time is the fact we broke some equipment up there. And as we all know, and I don't know if you were gonna do some research to better inform us, one of the problems about that is we can only do minor repairs and stuff. And we always said if we start breaking equipment on any private road, not just the one here tonight, that was gonna start becoming an issue, that was gonna be addressed, right?
Yeah, and we have to, I think there's a section of the roadway which was part of the disputed ownership a number of years ago, that's probably in the worst shape. We may need to look at that. But we also, if we're gonna deal with the betterment issue, we also have to deal with that issue of that section of roadway too. Whether it's through an easement or through a taking.
Oh, I thought didn't we address that with easements for the abutting properties, but
We did,
Shows
but
up
that
as-
one piece, there's that little piece that's
if you
kinda,
make the turn,
I call it the orphan piece, that still needs to be dealt with.
okay. Mr.
Hi.
Paletta, good to see you. Coach, good to see you.
So I had sent out a number of questions. Most of the neighborhood did receive the letter and the betterment petition, and a lot of questions have been inspired through the paperwork, absolutely. And a lot of them surround, obviously, the costs, you know. If I'm sure that if this were your situation too, your first question would be, what is the cost going to be? And other financial questions that surround it too as well. I do have a lot of questions. I'm not here to bog down the meeting this evening. But what I think would be helpful is if there were any way for, first of all, the signature period to be extended so that the residents could have a little bit better understanding of the steps of the betterment program. So obviously the first step we know is signing of the petition. So we're petitioning the town, basically, if that's, you know, and if we would have to meet the signature percentage. And then the next piece, I'm assuming, would be that the highway department would probably want to put together some level of a plan. And then beyond that, I think it would be imperative that the residents be allowed to have a meeting to discuss the findings of the highway department. And then just kind of go from there, because, I mean, I can answer some questions, and we can read the information that was supplied by Greg, but I think it would be a lot more helpful if we could just have it spelled out for us a little bit better, more cleanly, before, because this betterment petition was received positive by some and negatively by others, mostly because there's not a complete understanding. So before I start, giving you this list of questions, first of all, would you be willing to extend the signature period? Can you extend the signature period?
Oh, yeah, I think that's completely reasonable. The reason why I wanted to put a date in there was to kind of keep the process moving.
Yeah, for sure, I
Because you
understand.
know, if you don't, then these things slip.
Yep. And then the next piece is, would you be able to supply the residents a step-by-step approach to the betterment program?
Yeah, I think your suggestion, and Mr. Chairman, if you'd allow me to speak.
Yes.
Your suggestion is a good one. I think before, any final decision comes before the board, and then ultimately goes to town meeting to be approved.
Yep.
But before that, we kind of need an informal meeting,
Yeah,
where we all can kind of come in and present an itemized list of what the potential betterments would be, and see whether there's a consensus amongst the people who are there, whether we should select A, B, C, D, or just A and B, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Some type of idea of what it is.
yeah.
Mr. Chair, is the goal to make it suitable for approval by the town?
Well, the bylaw does provide that. The bylaw says that up to and including acceptance by the town. However, that's really, that area that does not need to be done, but it is one of the options.
Say that again?
So it is an option to do repairs that do not result in the road becoming an accepted roadway. You know what I'm saying is, something less than the accepted roadway.
Yep.
But the goal was to bring it before town meeting and have it
Yes,
accepted.
that's end goal, right?
That's the carrot, right?
Yeah, that's the long-term goal.
I mean, that's what everyone wants.
I hope that's what everyone wants. I mean, I know there's a lot of discussion about the former
right,
conflict,
pages
but
on
there's
here.
been no resolution with that, and I just can't, I don't want to go backwards. And that has also been expressed
length
by
of the
many other residents. And so the betterment program seems like a good opportunity, but it's just not fully understood. And
I'll do it.
obviously, the financial aspect of it is the biggest aspect of it.
Do you think it would be, helpful to have an informal meeting
Yes.
sometime before the holidays?
I think that would be the best idea before we decide to petition the town. If we could do that, get as many people here as possible
Yep.
representing each residence, I think that would be a wise choice in order for everyone to be able to make their best decision.
Okay.
So I won't fire all my questions at you. That was the biggest thing, because I feel as though, the two biggest things were, one, which you already talked about, was looking into that parcel of land at the end of the road. I feel like that's something that has to be addressed, since it's really what has been holding us up all along. And so if we proceed with betterment program, and that piece of parcel of land is still out there,
I think you'll hear me say that needs to be resolved as part of the betterment process.
okay.
Yeah, whether it's taking in title or an easement, but that issue needs to be resolved.
So the only question I'm gonna, well, outside of what I've already asked, but the only other question I wanna ask publicly, and I think I've answered it properly, but I just wanna make sure that I have, in case anybody is watching, or for those who are here this evening, and that is that if the residents do sign the petition, we're petitioning the town of Dudley for the betterment program, or to make progress, it's basically an application, right? We're not signing our lives away at that point. We're not locked in. It is just the beginning phases of exploring a betterment.
You are 100% right, because anything that happens has to be approved by town meeting.
Right.
So town meeting is the appropriating authority. So what would have to happen is, let's say the cost of the project is $75,000. Town meeting needs to vote to borrow that money, or $100,000, and then apply it against them. So all of that has to be done through town meeting. And not until it's voted by town meeting and then approved by the selectmen, who would actually have to then vote. The selectmen would have a list, and they'd actually vote to approve the individual betterments for each property. That's a ways off.
Yes.
That's a ways off. And we would
My
not.
understanding, I just want to make sure.
Well, remember, the betterments wouldn't be assessed until the project was completed. So you don't assess, just because you vote at town meeting.
Yes.
Then you're gonna need to do the work. You need to calculate out what the final cost of the project is and divide that up amongst all the residents.
Is there going to be a point in time where we will be given an approximation of the cost of,
I think that's the next step.
okay, that's a big one right there.
I think before we have that, to have that informal meeting, we kinda need an approximation.
Yeah, okay. That's all I have for this evening. I don't know if there's anyone else who might have questions. I have plenty, but we'll save those for the informal meeting.
Sure.
Mr. Massey?
Thank you, Chairman. Kristen, do you have a sense of, like, do you have 50%? I mean, before we even talk about cost and everything, I mean, you kind of want to make sure you can meet the threshold for the people in the neighborhood that want to do this. Do
Yep.
you think that that's?
I think that once there is more information out there to kind of quell their fears
fair enough.
of the costs,
Yep.
and, questions about liens being on their taxes and selling properties, and I think once we can ask those questions, we're about halfway. I'd like to go further than halfway. Obviously, the more that we have on board, then the better it will feel. I can't determine that, because there has been a little bit of negativity in conversations that I've had, but I've just tried to explain only what I know, and I've come here tonight to ask for a meeting so that if there are further questions and concerns, that people can ask them in their own terms, not me, asking. And it will just give them an opportunity to feel better about this or not.
Right.
But I do feel good about it.
You can also obviously send the questions in at any time.
Some,
Not expecting answers, that way Greg can.
some of the residents have been sending me questions. One of the questions that came up, just to clarify, was if the town decides to go forward with the project and someone says, well, I'm not gonna sign the petition, I don't want the betterment, I don't need the road improved. Once the town approves it, it gets applied to everyone.
Yep.
Whether they've signed the piece of paper or not signed the
Kind
piece
of
of
why I was asking.
paper. It gets applied to all properties.
I don't know if I sent in a
There's always a few.
bunch.
I'm
of
getting
questions.
I get a lot of,
Yeah, I know, I sent them in at like midnight last night, so, I didn't expect any responses, but I do have, I have sent in a number of questions that have been asked from people who live on the old Sixth Ave, Circle Drive, cause there's, quite frankly, there's a divide there because of the way, Circle Drive is divided by the old Sixth Ave and the new Circle Drive. And there's confusion as to why is Sixth Ave being treated, why have they been treated a certain way up to this point regarding services? And the rest of Circle Drive has been considered in a different way, but now we're at a point where we all have to have signatures on the petition. That's been, I didn't know how to explain that completely, because I don't have enough information on the old Sixth Ave.
The easy answer is because it used to dead end to a cul-de-sac. And I believe it was 1993, which predates all of us. The Board of Selectmen took a vote to no longer accept any private roads, but that road was already being done. Vinnie would know that. The roads that were being done, from that point forward, none were supposed to be done.
Yep.
So there was a vote of the very, very previous Board of Selectmen. I believe it was 93. We did some research at one time. And it was a cul-de-sac. They could go up, they could turn around and leave.
Right.
And you guys came in, they took the planning board, I think I just gotten off, and I think Mr. Horn was on, they enforced the as-built plan, which took the cul-de-sac away and made it a road, as it was supposed to have been done. And I believe that's why that older cul-de-sac went away.
So that's not an easy answer. To you, it's an easy answer. To
Well-
me, it's not an easy answer.
And I may be wrong on my dates and stuff, but I know the
Right.
Board of Selectmen took a vote at one time.
So what I have tried to do is try to steer away from discussing the past
Right.
and try to talk more about
Go forward.
Good,
the
that's
future,
perfect.
and not on a individual residence basis, but like what we as neighborhoods are looking to do to move forward. That conflict has no resolution to it. It hasn't, no one has done anything about it at this point. I'm not willing to go back.
Right, 25 years.
Right, but so here we stand, and so the question was, so the residents of Sixth Ave, extension, now Circle Drive, they said, well, we have nothing to worry about, we're always going to have sanding and plowing. And
That's not true.
thank you for saying that, because I didn't know if that was true or not.
We could vote, well, it's not on the agenda, we could vote at the next meeting, in theory, at the next meeting to waive some private road plowing. And if Vinnie's gonna come in now and tell us they broke some equipment, we're gonna,
Mr. Chairman, if you recall, at the last meeting, Greg was on vacation, and one of the things that, the next step in this process is gonna be to send a letter to everyone on private roads that essentially says, at some point it's gonna come to an end, so here's the betterment. Take a look at it.
I agree.
the
I
town
mean,
can.
that was a vote of the board, so.
So I just wanted to, I'm glad that you did say that and answer it in that way, because I'm just a citizen, I'm a citizen of Dudley, I'm a resident, I don't really know, I don't enforce the bylaws, So, I did mention to some of them that there was damage to the plow on a manhole cover in front of some of their houses, the very people I was talking to, and I said, I think this is a red flag, this is, something for you to take into consideration here, that there is a possibility that this year, there's a possibility that we could lose snow plowing and sanding services if we choose not to petition the town of Dudley and move forward towards road acceptance. And is that true? Okay, so,
Could happen.
yeah, so that's something that I think, out of fairness to those residents, need to hear at a meeting that we go to, not just from me, but, from the board as well, too. So that maybe it can help with urging.
Yeah, a sense of urgency or
Signature.
concern. Mr. Paletta?
Yeah, I just unclear about one thing. Who's actually gonna be doing the work on the roads? Is it the town?
Yeah, so it would be a town project.
Okay, with that
We can do it.
question answered, the betterment process gets approved, and then that gets approved at town meeting?
Does,
At that point, what's the next step? Does the road get accepted at town meeting?
no, not until it gets improved.
So the town works on a
So
private
the town
road?
basically appropriates money at town meeting to do a road project.
Yep.
And to assess betterments up to whatever the amount is. The road gets completed, then that road comes back for acceptance the following
Okay.
year. before the-
That was just, I was kind of unclear if the town's investing
Yeah, so-
all of this money, and then that road never gets,
So, yeah, so
Accepted.
the betterment bylaw allows the town to actually go forward and do the work. So the town does the work on behalf of the residents. I would assume we'd bid it out as a project, we wouldn't do it ourselves.
okay,
We bid it out, and then and then when the project's done, the cost gets assessed and the road gets accepted.
hopefully.
So, yeah, Greg, that was my next question. If the betterment, best case scenario, betterment gets accepted, town meeting accepts it, town meeting appropriates money, they still have to go through the acceptance process?
We do.
There's nothing in the bylaw that stated if it's a
But if they
betterment
meet the
repair.
criteria, Mr. Chairman,
Should.
it would almost be out of order for it to be voted against.
Right.
You know, if you meet, if all the criteria is met, and if the highway's in charge of the work, I'm pretty sure it'll be met.
Right.
And
I would assume that there'd be a affirmative vote of the board to go forward.
Go forward, okay.
Yes, and that was, following the financial aspect of it, that was obviously.
Yeah, that would be most disconcerting to have the money would be invested and have town meetings say they don't want to accept the
Right.
road.
Good, Vinnie? Kristen, good?
For tonight.
Yeah,
Good?
okay, well,
So the next step is,
I'll get you some dates.
Okay. And so you'll extend the petition, period, and then you'll come up with some dates?
Until sometime after you said you sent me some emails.
Yeah, I sent a couple emails last night. I would gladly come in and talk to you if you wanted to.
Sure.
how long of an extension? Do you think about?
I think it depends on what we come up with for a date for resident
No
meeting.
harm, there's no harm with that because no work's being done right now anyway.
I just don't want it to be extended a year.
30 days.
Yeah, 30 days would be great. I think it gives us enough time. We have the holidays kind of mixed in with all of
Yeah,
this, so.
and again, I apologize the fact that kind of sometimes is ambitious in terms of the dates. I just didn't want to see the thing kind of fall in between.
No, I have no problem with it. It did put me in a little bit of a tailspin trying to
Yeah.
get out there because I wanted to try to be ahead of it. But truly, I don't even think I would have been able to do that unless the questions from the neighbors have come up, and just told them that I would either ask tonight or request a meeting, and we can all be involved in it. So,
Vinnie, can you just, Kerry wasn't at the last meeting, can you just give him a quick synopsis on he didn't know the damage we're talking about to the truck that plowed? Just tell him.
I was using this, the new truck and plowing up the hill. I don't even want, I guess it was a manhole at that night, but,
Right.
it broke a bunch of bolts, and it shorted out some electronics on the plow.
Shorted out electronics. Wow, that's cheap.
yeah, I'm not sure what manhole cover is. I looked at that a couple of times, but I mean, the road is it's crumbling in some areas. The bump is the worst of
It's
all of
probably the bump.
the bump.
You said it
But manhole
before.
covers,
Yeah, you know the bump's there, the manhole cover didn't know it was there.
All right, so we're gonna work on a date, Greg?
We will.
Sorry, Mr. Massey.
Oh, yeah. So this is a really good exercise, I think, for everybody involved, especially the people on the list, the long list that Vinnie provided of private roads that haven't gone through this yet. So Greg, definitely make sure that we start sending notices maybe first, beginning of the year, just so people can be on, not on notice, but you know, this is something that, you know, is available to them.
Yeah, it's a good time of year to do it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's curiosity. Has
It's like a pilot, right? You know, if we can make this work for everybody and, hey, look, you got the road, your property values are gonna go up.
Yeah,
You know,
a lot of
no
positives.
Exactly.
positives.
You go to you go to sell the
Resale,
property,
you know,
no
just-
issues.
Yeah,
No issues.
for,
You know, and on this list too, that gave us the footage, linear footage, Paula Lane isn't included, but it comes out to around 8,000 linear feet.
would we be able to get a list of properties with, based on linear footage?
You're
'Cause-
talking about on your street?
Yeah, there were, another question that came up was, is it 50% signatures, or is it 50% of the linear footage?
That's it, 50% of the linear footage.
Okay, because I think in the letter, that came out,
On the front page.
did say linear footage, but then the answer to one of our, of the local.
So there's a different calculation.
Yeah.
So it's linear footage to get it before before the board.
Yeah,
It's then when it gets accepted, the cost is equally divided amongst all the property owners, regardless of their linear footage. So it's two different thresholds, linear footage to get it before the board, and then when the project is approved and the costs are assessed, they're assessed equally to everybody.
does everyone on the deed have to sign the petition?
We'll touch base with council and get back to you.
Okay, right. There's a woman on Circle Drive, her husband passed away last year. She just wanted me to ask if there's anything that she needs to do to, obviously, take his name off of. She feels as though proper paperwork has been done, but she'd asked if, she needed to do anything about that, but we can figure that out another day.
All right, Denny, you set?
Thank you, Kristen.
So we're good? I mean,
Yep.
if we have a big
Thank you.
storm at this point, we're good?
Yeah, it's gonna be, situation normal, right, Denny?
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Kristen.
Next up, Vinnie Paletta, snow emergency notifications. Maybe we'll get lucky and it won't snow all winter.
Perfect.
Not counting Sunday,
That's on there.
not counting this Sunday.
Really?
That's what we'll chance of, I heard.
Well, Mr. Chairman, were we able to block the area that's in question so that no plows hit it again down there?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll take a look at that
We'll
tomorrow.
put a post to it.
Did you want me to start this,
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Greg, or do you want to do this? The bylaw?
Go ahead.
Okay. Article 10 on the bylaws. Do you have copies of this?
No, we don't.
It's the second page, highlighted stuff. I got it. Michelle? Those are copies.
Oh, thank you, Michelle.
Sure.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
I've been trying to gather some feedback on the parking rules, Article 10 of the bylaws, Section 3, pretty much the highlighted areas. All the way down, the last highlighted area, the Board of Selectmen, Highway Commissioners, Chief of Police, or the Superintendent of Streets may declare a snow emergency upon which street parking shall be prohibited. Notification to the public shall be in the official town website and other electronic means that are available. The snow emergency shall expire within 24 hours unless it's specifically extended. I talked with Greg, and he was gonna do something on the town website. I talked to the police chief, he was gonna do something on Facebook and Twitter, I believe. I just didn't know how much of a notice you wanted to have the people, 6 hours notice, 10 hours notice. I didn't wanna go out too far because the forecast does change. pretty frequently, so I didn't wanna cause a lot of false alarms. If we say there's a snow emergency, it's kinda has to be enforced. There's towing provisions in that highlighted area above what I just read.
Right. So Greg, also at the last meeting, we asked Vinnie what he wanted to constitute as a snow emergency. He gave us a amount. I don't see that in the bylaw. We need to have that codified? So-
We do.
But, I mean, we can still declare an emergency,
Absolutely. You have total discretion to declare an emergency right now.
so is it better not to have it in there?
I think so.
Just use it as
I
just
think so.
discretionary?
I think as long as you, as a board, have an internal policy regarding what depth you consider to be constitute a snow emergency, that's sufficient. I don't think we need to put it in the bylaw.
So better not to.
I don't think it needs to be there. I mean, people could argue the other way, but I think the fact that it's broadly worded allows you the discretion to enact an emergency regardless of whatever the depth of the snow would be.
Because I know we got a question from a resident too, saying, what if it was like an ice storm emergency where Vinnie has to get out there? Does that count? Because sometimes you do treat the roads and you go back and scrape stuff up, right?
Yeah, I think that would be a snow emergency.
So it just would fall under the same
Sure.
broad discretion?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
we've
Vinnie would
had,
contact you, me, or the
we've had some
police?
pretty bad ice storms.
Yeah.
2009, 2010, I can't remember which year, but it was end of days.
Mr. Chairman, is there like an acceptable, maybe the police chief knows, like 24-hour notice in advance of a snow emergency, so
Yeah, that's a good idea.
give people sufficient notice before?
We had discussed it, I don't think there's any real set time, but again, it's one of those things where, just like Vinnie was saying, you don't wanna go too far out because the forecasts change, but then also too, you have a situation where you want people to kind of pay attention to it, because if they learn about it too far in advance, they're not gonna do it. So, I think anywhere up to 12 hours would probably be pretty good, especially depending on how it works. And I agree with the comment before too about leaving it no specified amount, because I believe there's another section of the bylaw that covers the fact that the superintendent of the streets can have cars removed for if they're interfering with snow or ice removal operations. So that kind of gives it there, but sometimes you want some little bit broader discretion in those cases. So what usually happens, and like I explained to Vinnie, was that whenever they'll call in, we'll put this out, if there are vehicles that are in the way, his guys are usually pretty good about calling in and then having us check the license plates to find out where the people are, and we try to make a courtesy contact to them to have them remove their vehicle and get it out of the way. If it doesn't happen within a reasonable period of time, then we call a tow truck and have it hauled out. But we want to try to at least give people a chance to get those vehicles moved out of the way.
Chief, do they normally have a place where they can move it to? Because that always begs the question is,
Yeah, it's always even apartment buildings and things, they're supposed to be having access or having areas where they can put them. And I know sometimes the highway departments work pretty good with some folks as far as saying park on one side of the street, have to clean it up, then move it to the other side of the street, and they'll clean it up after that. Especially a lot of the tight areas around the Jericho
Yeah.
section over there, it's a little bit difficult. I think the big problem I think they run into is even people in residential neighborhoods that just keep their cars on the street to keep the driveways open for their own snowplow people to come through. So that's a problem that comes in there, but,
And like they don't understand too, and remember that bad winter we had a few years back, Oxford Ave, for example, was like a disaster. People left their cars out there for 3-4 days. After the storm, they were going back doing cleanups. They couldn't get the roads fully widened, you know, with people buried in and.
Well, the biggest concern I have is when it starts melting, is that water is being blocked. It can't travel down the
Right.
gutters into the drains, and you start flooding cellars,
roadways.
and then that snow that was left in the road turns to a block of ice, and you can't move it, and
Right.
that's just a bad ripple effect. If we can get them clean right off, curb to curb, makes it easy for everyone.
Right.
So, Mr. Chairman, we're just leaving this essentially the superintendent's discretion,
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
time and amount?
you coordinate with police and fire
I think
and.
that's how it is.
I guess if there's a big forecast, it seems like these things are always now forecast several days in ahead.
Yeah.
There's no reason why we should be caught short.
Yeah. Well, I know this last storm, they forecasted 2 to 4 inches, and we ended up getting 8. So, I mean, like I said, I don't want to have a lot of false alarms either. But my goal is the 2 inches on the ground would be, that's when we start
2
plowing,
inches.
so. But if the forecast calls for 1 to 3, we're not gonna go with a 1-inch measurement, we're going with the 3-inch measurement, so that'll put the snow ban in effect.
Right, and like you said, if it's going out on social media, not everybody has it, obviously. We can also do reverse 911 call-outs, right? And if we have
Kind of if it's necessary. I also have a media notification list too,
Right.
that we send releases out to, so we can put something out to them, so they'll all have it.
So if we lift it, like say, like the storm's not as bad as you thought, 24-hour ban, but you lift it because after 6 hours, all of a sudden it changed, like the one they could come in now, they said if it stays flat, we're all set. If
Yeah.
not, you won't know until that day. I think we're in good standing with this bylaw. And we'll just leave it up to you guys.
Use your
You guys
judgment.
all coordinate. Obviously, work the storms like you've been doing for 30 years.
Yeah.
If the ambulance is called out, you can open up a road, you open up the road.
I wanna use this bylaw for a tool for the department to help us out too, so.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Good
All
job.
right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Next up, DMC roof repairs discussion. I know Mr. Ruda asked for this, and Greg had some information he wants to share with the rest of the board.
Can I give you an update? So, there was $450,000 that was voted at the May 2018 town meeting for the roof project and the replacement of the building cooling system. So the cooling system project was completed. That cost $106,854. We did not incur any design costs or engineering costs associated with it because it was pretty much a replacement of the existing system that was there. For the roof project, we have hired an architect. You have a copy of the architect's fee proposal. The cost is $7,500, and that's a relatively low cost for design of a new roof. And the reason why it's relatively low is we anticipate using the state bid process. There's a joint bid out there for roofing materials. So the most cost-effective means to replace the roof is to purchase the materials under the state contract and then go out to bid competitively for the installation of those materials. That's typically how it's done nowadays. That exact scenario that I just described to you was part of the reason why we haven't gone forward with the project, because there was a bid protest that was filed challenging the authority of towns to kind of do a split project under the state bid and then bidding out the roofing materials. That has not been resolved, but we do have urgency to go forward with the project, and that's the reason why I signed the contract with the architect. So the intent is to do state bid on materials, have those materials stored off-site, and then go to bid on the installation. So the architect needs to develop the bid specification of installation of those materials. The total project cost is not to exceed $335,000. And what do you get for $335,000 is a minimum 25-year warranty for this roof and annual maintenance services. It's one of the things that's been lacking is we only had a 10-year roof on this building. So this building had a PVC membrane roof. For those who may be listening in TV land who like to know the details, that roof had a 10-year warranty on it, and it failed. And it was proven that it was failed because we had a company come through when the weather was warm and do some infrared testing. And the infrared testing detected the presence of water under the roof structure. So not only did the roof leak, the leaking roof ruined the insulation that was underneath. And one of the questions that we wanted to know going into the project was, do we have to replace the roof and the insulation? And the answer to that question is yes. We have to do roof and insulation. The good news is the project can be completed over the winter months, and will involve removal of the membrane roofing and all of the underlying insulation. And that's, as I understand, the project will be ready to bid, and we hopefully will have bids in by the end of this month. Then we'll proceed with the project going forward. So we'll hire, the architect will be our on-site project manager. And again, the maximum cost of the project is $335,000. I expect that it will probably come in under that, but I've been wrong before. But we were pretty, we used a high estimate when we went to town meeting. And we anticipated that the insulation under the roof was ruined and needed to be replaced, and that turned out to be a correct assumption. So, other questions on it?
Mr. Ruda?
No, I think you covered everything. You're confident with the, over the winter install?
I am. Yep, they can do over the winter install. The nice thing about doing it over the winter time is that people won't smell the adhesives, because part of the problem is typically when your building is opened up, people complain about the smell. But I've been assured that they can do the project over the winter. They can't do it when it's snowing, and they can't do it when it's wet, but they're not deterred by cold. And we see some advantages to doing it this winter, because typically waiting until the warmer weather, the contractors are then in competition with other roofing projects. And those are namely public schools and colleges that like to get their roofs done in the warm weather, and it would cost us a lot more money. That's it.
You good with that?
Yeah, we're good.
Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome.
Next up, discussing town administrator hiring process, suggested calendar of dates, and the updated, or current, I should say, job description.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if you'd allow me, just kind of, because I jotted down some notes. I guess the easiest thing to do is to take a look at the job description. The job description will need to be updated, and it will need to be updated to reflect the present duties of the position. But more importantly, it needs to reflect the provisions of the new bylaw that was adopted at the fall town meeting as they impact the town administrator's position. So what you have in front of you is the old bylaw, and I suggest that that's a good place to start. I'm happy to help you if you want me to update it and put pen to paper. I'm happy to do that, but I don't want to do that without your approval.
No, absolutely, I mean, I don't speak for the whole board, but you're the gentleman doing the job, you're the
Right.
person. No one would know better than you how it's changed and evolved, and now we adopt the bylaw.
Right.
I mean, like Jonathan said at the town meeting, it basically codifies everything you're doing anyway.
It does, and so it's kind of one of the key things that needs to be put in here is the responsibilities under the new bylaw. And then just some clarification in terms of duties and responsibilities that relates to personnel and personnel administration. The bylaw does provide some oversight there, but it doesn't identify the town administrator as the personnel director for the town.
Right.
Okay, so, I will do that, and I'll get it to you for your next meeting. The other thing that I did was I drafted up a calendar, and I drafted up the calendar with the idea that you didn't need to have someone brought in as an interim administrator. And so the thought was I kind of worked around the fact that the key date would be the start in June of 2019. And I like to work backwards. I like to say then by the end of April, the board would want to vote on the appointment of the new administrator. And keep in mind, there are two things that then kind of follow that aren't on paper here. Number one, you need to negotiate a contract with the person. And number two, the person needs to give notice to their present employer, which is why you don't want to have a start date and the date that the board votes to have a new designee too close together. You need to allow some type of space between them. So that would bring final interviews to be done by the middle part of April. And kind of cognizant of the fact that you've got school vacation week sandwiched in there, which is why I gave it a range between April 8th and April 22nd. And then that would necessitate that the preliminary interviews would be completed sometime in the middle part to the end of March. And you would receive resumes on or about February 22nd. So although I'm leaving on June 1st, it does kind of present the fact that you may want to get into this sooner than later. I also felt some advantage to posting the position internally and advertising it for the MMA conference. So the MMA conference is always the week of January 18th and 19th. We don't have to do that, but I think it's kind of nice to have that out there because everyone's thinking about positions and jobs and things like that. And it's nice to be able to have that information out there. I think it's important. I know that Mr. Carmignani, the treasurer, and I have had some conversations. He thinks it's important. I actually give him credit to him. But those are kind of the key dates that I jotted down here. You might want to tweak them a little bit. Maybe you can adjust them a week or two if people aren't going to be around. But I think it's important to really try to make a decision by the end of April. That's the way I look at it.
Right, because, I mean, you're gonna be going, obviously.
Yeah.
And you'd have I'm sure a lot of them, your peers anyway, you probably know a lot, but there'd be a chance for some little
Yeah.
FaceTime.
Absolutely.
You can get a feel for it, or network.
I'm your best salesman.
Hope so.
I am.
We're your biggest advocate.
I am. I'm high on Dudley, so whatever I can do to promote the town, there's no better town than here. So,
Special place.
it is a special place. Although
What's others?
Try not to be too sarcastic.
That was Rudy's pet project, his first year on the board.
He's sitting in my seat. so
Any
he's-
questions for Greg? I know it's kind of an aggressive calendar, looking at the holidays and stuff, but I think he hit all the high points. We definitely need to get it out there, get the word out. Hopefully we get a strong pool, as we did last time. We had some pretty good candidates, but as we stated, Greg obviously was head and shoulders, and
This is doable, Mr. Chairman, if we stick to it.
right,
Just comes a couple of weeks for interviews, just scheduling people, and
right.
I assume we'll, see, now we have you here to sort of help, create a funnel of candidates,
That's the goal.
right? So you can kind of vet, we had to do all that last time, and it took longer, and then we had to kind of rate our own line.
and give us a,
Fun fact, Mr. Chairman,
Oh, yeah.
we all picked you first, remember that?
yep. We actually
Separately. we
Actually,
all-
we won the other guy from Vermont, but he couldn't make it after he drove home. I'm just kidding. But also, Greg can also give us some point-specific
Yes.
questions to Dudley
Yes.
that
Yeah,
we
I
may
think-
not think of.
I think it's doable, and again, I would suggest you don't want to have to bring in an interim person unless you need it. I look around, I saw Oxford had an interim manager, I saw Sturbridge has an interim manager. Sturbridge has had 2 interim managers since I've been here, and I've only been here for 4.5 years. So, to the extent you can avoid an interim person, I think that works to the town's advantage.
And we can rely on Michelle's feedback too, because nobody knows what goes on day to day like
That's-
Michelle does.
That's right.
You can't leave too. We're losing too many people at once. There's way too many people. So any questions for Greg on
Yeah, any
that?
questions? I just kind of want to be clear. I wanted to get this out there to get the ball rolling, because I know that if you wait too long, then everything becomes rushed, and that's not good.
Oh, Greg, thank you. It's a comprehensive chart you prepared. In my opinion, I look at the, obviously salaries, but I look at the overall
Yeah.
budgetary responsibility, which is always, we know we're low. We're lower than most towns, obviously. And sometimes it can skew someone's analysis if they look at a position and they say, wait a minute, but then somebody might have more responsibility. Could be a strong administrator, could be working with double the budget size, might have an assistant administrator like some
Agree.
towns do.
But yeah, it's,
But it's a good document to start.
I guess it's good in the sense that when you do find someone, at least you've got a tool to kind of do some
Right.
comparisons.
Right, and sometimes, you know how it goes, these people have been in the local area anyway, and there's some familiarity
Yeah.
just from being involved. So any questions for Greg? All set, Bailey? Just double check.
Bailey, you interested? Not yet?
He couldn't afford the pay cut. Although he's trying to get brownie points with the vice chair by dressing like him. So.
He's a little more festive.
He's got green in his, green and red. Thanks, Greg.
You're welcome.
Chief Wayner, ethics complaint?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is as you know, I've been teaching a class at Nichols College, a class a semester up there since 2009. Back when that happened, I had had a discussion with the previous administrator and the chairman of the board at the time, and I had contacted the Ethics Commission also to see if there'd be any conflicts or problems. They didn't see anything at that particular time. And so, just been going forward, business as usual. Well, recently, someone filed a complaint with the Ethics Commission. It's an anonymous complaint, so I'm not sure who filed it, about the fact that I'm teaching there. So I was contacted by the Ethics Commission, reviewed the whole situation. There's still, basically in a nutshell, there is still no conflicts with anything there. I went over the entire process that we have dealing with them as far as details and other things that we do. I don't do any other detail work or anything else up there at the college. So what they recommended was that I file a disclosure statement and leave it on file with the town clerk. And as part of this, they had said that the board has to have there has to be something on record at an official meeting or something that the board actually did this. So I guess the recommendation would be to have the board authorize the town administrator to sign off on a disclosure agreement through the Ethics Commission. I'll file it with the town clerk, and that'll be the end of it. So they said if there's any further complaints, they just refer them to the town clerk, that it's on file and everything is done.
So Chief, questions that come up too periodically, how does that work? When you're up there, are you on your own time? Like, are you using your, like, comp or vacation time, or is that part of your workday?
Yeah, well, I don't get any comp time or anything like that. So what happens is that's all basically part of, my work schedule gets adjusted with it. So if I'm there for 2 hours, normally what I'll do is I'll schedule it near the end of the day. So if I'm in the morning early and I go up there in the afternoon, or I'm back in the afternoon, or back in on the weekends, or whatever it is, so the time off is made. So it's not a specific, I put in for 2 hours of this, or an hour for that, or whatever it is. Because basically, as you know, the job I've been doing sometimes requires more, or sometimes requires less, but most of the time requires more. So that's what I'll do, is my schedule will be adjusted for it. The time frame that I'm spent up there, it's an hour and a half twice a week, how it works out to be. So it's, probably a little longer than a lunch hour kind of thing. So that's how the situation develops.
Right, and you're obviously, so people at home know, obviously if there's something were to happen that required your presence, your class ends and.
Yep. Oh, and it's been known if something comes up, or if there's something of importance that has to be dealt with, this is priority one and it's dealt with, and things have been pretty good with that. And you just keep things aside so that you can give them assignments to do if you're not there. So it all has worked out, and there have been no problems in the almost 10 years that I've been doing that. But again, this is just one of those situations that they said it should just have something on file just to satisfy any further complaints about it.
Was there a specific basis what's the conflict, other than?
I wasn't given anything with it. The only thing that they did ask about, and once I spoke with them, they really kind of said, well, no, it's not a problem. We've been doing patrol details up on the campus for about a dozen years now, since about 2006. And so one of the questions came up about either the scheduling of those or payments on those. And my point was, I don't work them. So if it was like a situation where I had set up a detail and I go and sign up for it and go work it, that might be a problem because I'd be adjusting my own schedule. But I don't work any of those. I don't work any private outside details. So there's really not a conflict. So any of my dealings with that, as far as setting up all the shifts for the pub nights and everything else like that they do, it has no bearing on me financially to benefit out of that.
Do you generally do that scheduling anyway, or does someone, like one of the sergeants do that?
I'll usually discuss it with the public safety, the head of the public safety department up there, and we'll determine whatever it would be, and we schedule that there. The patrol shifts, we schedule those out months in advance, so we have the hours and things down for that. So that's all done in advance.
And for the public record, the school, Nichols pays for those, right?
Yes, Nichols pays for those. They actually pay for the officers, they pay for the administrative fees, and they also pay a 10% cruiser fee that goes
You don't
back
get
to our
any
revolving
benefit
fund.
from that.
What's that?
And you don't get any benefit from that, and there's no?
Nothing to me, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's just,
All the money goes through the town. Yeah, the only thing that comes in is the money we use probably for the revolving fund for cruisers, but that's built to any contractor that gets a police cruiser on a detail.
again, generally, if there was a major emergency in town, that officer, can he leave to come to, if there was something where we needed him, is he allowed to leave to perform town duties, or is he?
Yeah, I mean, you're right in town, so it's, yeah, we've had some major instances before where those people have freed up, and the school is very gracious to allow that to happen, because technically they're hiring a person to be there all the time. But they can understand, usually in a major emergency, if a guy has to free up for a half hour or something like that, they've been very good with that.
Then he just go back and finish up?
Yes.
Is there any contract, Did you speak to that in your contract at all about having another job?
No.
You should probably write some language.
No, I think it was basically for things that to be approved, which is why, before I even accepted this, I came to the administrator and the board
You got
before
approval?
to make sure that it was done. The only question they had was that there was nothing that was ever found in an official board vote or an official, anything official in the minutes, because if it was, I wouldn't be here tonight. So they just said, basically, just to clarify it. And I think by the form that you have to fill out, somebody for the town has to sign off as an authorization. So that's why it would be the recommendation to have the board authorize the town administrator to sign off on a conflict of interest form to be filed with the town clerk.
There you
Do we have a worded motion, Greg? You want to work on that for the next meeting?
go. We don't have that at this time. We wanted Steve to come in and get the opinion of the board before we worked on anything.
What's the board's opinion, Mr. Sigenovich?
I think just from the Ethics Commission standpoint, they said it's just something that had to be reflected that there was some official action. So if the board votes to authorize the town administrator to sign off on the conflict of interest form for me to teach, that'd be sufficient enough.
I've dealt with the ethics too, people on me, they don't give you writing, they wouldn't give you a written opinion saying get a vote, they just tell you and then you get it.
No, that's it. Well, they sent me a letter on it, kind of outlining it, but, you know, when I called them for clarification, again, I think they deal with so many cases and they see so many things that come through. I think they were a little bit confused by it. And even the person I had spoken to, it's let me see, the person I spoke to was a Monica Brookman. She was even a bit confused by it. And so after the conversation, she said, well, you really don't have to file it. But she says, I think to be on the safe side, in case there's any future complaints like this, you have the form on file with the town clerk, and then we would just refer them to the town clerk, and the matter is done.
Right, so
Mr.
Greg,
Chairman?
Right, John.
If the board pleases, I'll make a motion that we ratify the decision that was made previously based on police chief's contract, to allow him to teach a class at Nichols College.
Second.
Third.
All right, no more-
If we've previously allowed it, I think we've done it.
Just want to add to it to instruct the town administrator to craft the agreement suitable to both parties.
Should probably put it in the contract. Steve.
Yeah, he's just basically got to sign off.
We're
on it.
all not gonna be
Yeah, I'll
here.
have to look at the contract with it there, but I think it is, I think I'll have to look at the language of it, but,
Just so it survives.
Yeah.
Any of us or Greg or.
yep,
you
I'll
know,
look up at I'll review the language.
So, with the motion that we just made, point specific, not that he's gonna become a full-time professor, it's for the one class, like if his schedule increased, we have to go back and revisit it, or we're not
Yeah,
gonna?
I think that's exactly what you wanna do, is you wanna establish whatever's been in place, you kinda wanna continue that going.
Like I said, I don't foresee the chief being a full-time professor and a night chief, but,
Nothing has changed in 9 years.
right, why would it change now? But I'm just saying I wanna be,
I have no
like
plans of
John
changing
said,
anything.
we're gonna want it to outlive us. So, Greg
Just
will,
so you don't have to deal with it again.
right, worry about it again. Someone
Yeah.
says, oh, he's teaching 2 classes now.
Well, I think all it just says is just make it subject to approval of the board, or whatever it is, and it's
So
done.
that's okay with the mover and the second. Greg, include the language, Greg DeCraft,
Fair enough.
suitable agreement.
Yeah.
Just after 10 years, Mr. Chairman, why did you think this happened now, Steve?
Well, and, yeah, sometimes I think you don't always have everybody that's a fan, so
Yep.
I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, just seems a little,
Motion made and seconded and amended, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
I thank you. And also, just a side note too, while I'm here, just my presidency of the Mass Chiefs will be running out in about 2 or 3 weeks. So, been very good learning experience, very good time, but I thank the board and the administrator and
been a
everybody
year.
for all the support for the last
It's been a
year.
year?
It's been a year, yep. Time flies when you're having
cannot
fun.
believe it's been a year.
Yep.
So you emeritus? Yeah, what is it, emerit?
Emirates.
Yeah, I forget what it is.
Emeritus.
That's when you die, you're emeritus.
Yeah, we don't have the fancy
I don't
term, I'll
think
just
that- I don't
pass
think a living
president
guy
for a
gets to be
year.
emeritus.
But I appreciate it. I mean, I know it's
like getting a
it's
stamp.
quite an undertaking, and I appreciate it from the beginning, the board's support and Greg and everybody else's support on that, because it does take a lot of time and everything else, but it's been, again, a very valuable and good learning experience, so thank you again for all that.
No problem, Chief.
Vouchers.
Next up, draft of the hazardous mitigation plan for public comment and vote. Mr. Balkunas.
I have copies of a quick summary of it, rather than having you read through the whole document from cover to cover. And
much
I'll
prefer to do
just wait for you to get a copy of it. So I've been busy. I was gone for the last meeting, and now I hit you up with all these things. So, the town has a requirement that we have to submit a federal disaster mitigation plan. And so we had one in place, and it expired, so the last one would have been done back in 2013. It's not an emergency response plan, so the most important thing to understand, it's to intend to identify hazards, whether they be natural hazards due from flooding, winds, hurricanes, tornadoes, winter storms, earthquakes, and landslides, extreme temperatures, drought, etc. We began the process back in August, right after the tornado that hit Dudley and Webster, and we formed a committee, and we worked, this committee, which consisted of the fire chief and the assistant fire chief, police chief, town planner, town administrator, water and sewer superintendent, and treasurer collector. We met several times with the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, who helped us pull this plan together. And we had a number of meetings. We had one public hearing to solicit public input. We also had to post it online to solicit additional public input. And we identified and mapped out the areas that the town felt were most at risk for any of these natural hazards. And what actions, most importantly, what actions we could take in the future to minimize adverse actions affecting these facilities, structures, etc. So the plan is ready. You have a copy of it. It's similar to what was done back in 2013, but it was updated to reflect the input of the staff that's here today. And once you approve, then it needs to be approved through the state and federal agencies governing emergency planning. So, again, there's already been one public meeting on it. We posted it online, we solicited input, and we identified hazards in the community that we think are important and might impact it. So, you may ask, what are the mitigation areas that we needed to address most importantly? And that would be to complete drainage improvements along West Main Street and other flood-prone areas, address the dams in the community and work that needs to be done with them, develop and implement a debris management plan, continue to enhance coordination with local utilities, educate residents and businesses about hazards and how to prepare, and utilization of code red and social media alerts, and continue to enhance the integration of local mitigation policies in planning and other development-related bylaws. And then there were some miscellaneous recommendations concerning beaver dams, street cleaning, and maintenance of storm drains. So, Mr. Chairman, if you have questions, we'll try our best to respond to them. And if not, I would ask you to approve the recommended action that's in your packet.
Is there a plan to incorporate this into a capital improvement plan?
No, because,
Mitigation?
this document makes us eligible for federal funds.
Yeah.
So without this document, we're ineligible to receive any federal funds, and that's the carrot that we have. I think your strategy is a good one, though, and we can look at that. Because certainly anything that's identified in this plan should receive priority for capital funding.
Or at least attention.
Right, definitely attention, but we're gonna have to look at that funding mechanism for capital improvement, because some of these are gonna be costly repairs, right? We start getting into those dams.
Well, things like the ongoing issue with drainage and
Right.
cutting trees back.
It's pretty good stuff.
Could be a grant.
Weeping dams, so.
The fire chief loved participating in the
I was
program.
gonna ask, he's a.
He provided a lot of input. He and
He's pretty raucous.
he and
when
the
it comes to
assistant
this.
provided a lot of input into the process.
He's our DEMA guy. I know you listed all the people in the meeting, but you're the man when it's emergency management. Right, but I mean, when push comes to shove, you're the emergency management guy. Please have phone, cell phones. Come on up, chief. Please.
Like I said, we worked with CMRPC, just like the administrator said, and, I don't know, we put a lot of work into it. One of the last meetings, we found some things that needed to be changed and updated, so we took care of that.
Good.
So, I don't see anything wrong with it. I think it should be approved.
It's on the town's website if anyone wants to see it.
I'm sure it'll be must-see viewing.
No doubt
The
there's
website
been
might crash tonight.
multiple clicks.
I'll make a motion that we approve the draft plan presented for the Dudley Hazard Mitigation Plan update with a draft revised November 20th, 2018.
Second.
Before I call to a vote, Greg, is that an acceptable motion?
That's it.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, everybody involved with that project.
Off on it.
I know it's not easy. Next up, holiday office closing. Greg?
I did a survey, quick survey of closings. So typically, we are closed on Christmas Eve at noontime. And since Christmas Eve falls on a Monday, I think it would be a wise decision to be closed to the public that day. I also suggest it's business as usual on New Year's Eve. Some towns close early on New Year's Eve. I don't think that that's necessary. But I think the idea of being closed for that Monday is probably a pretty good one. It saves everyone the ability of coming in on that Monday for a real short work day and
Talking about New Year's Eve.
Christmas Eve.
Oh, Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve, no action on New Year's Eve. No action on New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve is a regular work day for us.
What's the board's opinion? Questions?
What did we do last year?
Depends on when the holiday falls.
I see it was a Monday.
The interesting thing.
When it was a Friday, when it was on a Friday.
I don't, yeah, I think last year I think Christmas came on the weekend or on a Monday, so it was not an issue, and it hasn't been an issue when it falls during the week because people work until noontime, they have Christmas Day off, and they come in the day after Christmas, so there's never a question about that.
Right, and if we don't, like, for example, this New Year's Eve scenario, if somebody wants to be out, they have to use earned time.
Yeah, because I'm planning on being out on that day, and I'll use my vacation day.
Pretty sure I'll be working a full day.
It is what it is.
So is that what we'll do this time? People can take time, or?
On New Year's.
New Year's, but not Christmas. I suggest we remember they're already being given a half a day holiday anyway. So it's on the town gives that under its regulations, under its bylaw. But I'm suggesting that 4-hour block, 4.5 hour, whatever it is, that we not open.
So you're recommending they not use earned time before we
Correct.
close, they,
Correct. Because if you require them to use earned time, then you imply that if someone doesn't want to use it, they have to be here. Not everyone has time. And, like I said, I checked with 10 towns. I sent a note out to my town administrative colleagues in the area. And most of them did not plan, they were either closed on Christmas Eve or they were to be half a day. But I don't think I found anyone that was open a full day. And the majority of them were closed altogether. Some were closed on New Year's Eve, and some of them had a half a day on New Year's Eve. And I think that's probably a stretch, but I think the Christmas Eve thing, because of the Monday holiday, it's only the Monday holiday that gets us into this bind, is it doesn't make sense that we'd be open for business that day.
Mr. Massey?
So all necessary payroll and everything will get done the
Friday.
Friday before?
It has to be.
Okay.
So the big question becomes, obviously, fire and EMS will work a regular schedule,
All of our
unionized people.
will work in
contracts.
accordance with the contract.
So what venue, you guys got a half a day Christmas Eve, or is it a full day?
I'm not even sure.
I don't remember, is Christmas Eve a half day for them? But it doesn't matter, unionized people work as
Unionized people work whatever's in the
negotiated.
contract.
Okay.
If they want to come forward with a proposal, we'll sit there and listen to it, but we're under no obligation.
But not before Christmas Eve this year.
I'll make a motion that the board delegates the town administrator to take care of the staffing plan going into the Christmas holiday.
Excellent.
Second.
And notify accordingly.
You notify accordingly.
Okay with me?
Good with that?
That's off our shoulders.
Oh, no, make him earn his last 5.5 months.
There you go.
We loaded him up, we gave him a strong tasks list that we must have accomplished, or we told him we're withholding his last check and all his earned time. Motion made and seconded, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Unanimous. Oh, and I, sorry, Mr. Breyer, I skipped, I think you're here for H.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
I put a check on it, so I apologize. 5-year economic development plan, discussing agricultural commission goal number 1, the establishment, tabled from the last meeting, I believe at Mr. Ruder's request, after Mr. Joseph brought forward some names, and I think the issue was, Jonathan, I don't want to speak for you, was concerned with putting cart before the horse, because we haven't even officially adopted
Right,
the
so we had
plan.
a draft economic development plan submitted. We hadn't had a chance to edit it or weigh in on it or adopt it, so we didn't want to hold up the agricultural part of it. So we wanted to try to address that tonight and see if we can come to at least adopt that section of it so it doesn't mess up any kind of
Sure did. You want to get on the ballot?
commissions.
So, I understand that there was some resistance to the formation of the Ag Commission at the last town meeting.
Strong word, resistance. I think we just wanted to
Okay.
clarify, why would we establish a commission before we adopted the plan? But, as Jonathan said, we didn't want to hold it up, because that seems to be a big goal, big thrust of that.
Yeah, so again, you know, the process was 18 months ago, we had started the 5-year plan. Originally, we had both the Ag Commission and the Recreation Commission on the Springtown warrant, and because of wording, it was, you know, we pulled it because from what we submitted and what was actually there was different. So then we continued to have our public hearings. We submitted the plan in July to the Board of Selectmen. And want to, you know, again, being a plan, we have timeframes and people that are responsible for doing different things. And within the plan, it said, fall town meeting, we're going to put a warrant article in there for the Recreation Commission and the Agriculture Commission. And that's what we did. In my world, silence is acceptance. We submitted the plan in July. I had made myself available on numerous occasions to come before the board to help out, answer any questions. I'm going to keep proceeding. That's who I am. You know, if I have a mission, I'm going to get it done. And so, you know, with the support of the Economic Development Committee, we put it on the warrant. We had, you know, continued conversations. I even came here, the public hearing with the FAA and the Board of Selectmen. You had your hearing on the articles. I thought it was going to be unanimous. I didn't see any resistance whatsoever. So, but the simple fact of the matter is, the Agricultural Commission and the Recreation Commission was approved by the town at town meeting. So in fact, the commission has been authorized by the town. Now, what we're trying to do here is to do it in a very organized fashion that makes sense. And so we figured that the Agricultural Commission was more important to get up and running first over the Recreation Commission. The Recreation Commission is going to be one of those things that probably evolves over a number of years. The Agricultural Commission, it turns out that the state actually adopted a new general bylaw or a mass statute. It's under, I think it was 48L. Now, we did not adopt this as a town, and I don't think that we should. I think the new Agricultural Commission should review this and see someday down the road if they want to, if it's worth it for Dudley to actually adopt this state statute. This state statute actually gives the Agricultural Commission authority to run and own land, buy land, manage the land, take over the conservation lands. All right, that's not what we did. That's not what we adopted. What we did is we set up basically an advisory commission that consists of 3 active farmers, 3 residents that have a vested interest in farming or farming background, and to basically, how do we get our dormant agricultural lands to be productive again? So what we did is we set up a forum that's going to be held on Saturday at the Dudley Grange. It's Dudley's Farmers Forum. We invited the 50-plus agricultural farmers that are in town. Some people think there's less than 5. Michelle helped address all those envelopes and mail them out. Thank you very much. We sent out that invitation on behalf of the Economic Development Committee and the Board of Selectmen. And what our goal is to explain the new committee, how it was approved, what the actual warrant article said. And then we want the farmers to actually nominate to the Board of Selectmen a slate of candidates that they feel would be perfect Agricultural Commission members. Because it makes sense that someone that has a vested interest and knows about farming be on the Agricultural Commission. And it'll be one of those things where it's going to probably start off very loose. Let them find their way, let them figure out what they want to do, what's important to them. The good thing is, we'll have a commission that the state, the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources can interact with. There's been a lot of money out there from both the federal, USFDA, and the state that's helping local farmers. It was just a grant that was out there for anybody that owned APR land for $15,000. All you had to do is come up with $1,500 of it as the landowner, and the state would have given you the other $15,000. So if you needed to, fix a barn or, fix some roads or do some work, that would have been available. And so this commission is part of the long-term effort to get those dormant agricultural lands back working. The meeting on Saturday, and please, everybody's welcome, is at the Dudley Grange between 1 and 3. It says refreshments will be served. We have a budget of $100 at the Economic Development, so maybe we'll get coffee donated or something.
Probably a good idea.
But really, the purpose of me being here is to answer any questions that I may not have done a good job answering, that the board here has. So really, I was expecting you guys to have more of an internal discussion about the Ag Commission, and if I could be a resource, so be it.
Jonathan?
So, I have 2 concerns. The first concern is, don't misconstrue my taking this up as any, we appreciate the work you've done on it. The bylaw that was passed at the town meeting, one thing done and over with. This expands the duties and powers under that bylaw of the Agricultural Commission. One of the first concern I have is the Agricultural Resources, the commission here has empowered the authority to apply for and secure grants and funding as it relates to agricultural land issues. That's fine, but it has to be done under the authority of the board, selectmen. It can't be done under an independent authority, because there are a lot of things, including budgeting and matched grant funding and that sort of thing, that need to go through this board and seek final sign-off on any acceptance of grants.
So John, where are you reading that?
Page 28.
Top of page 20.
It's like,
Is this the actual warrant article that we
This
passed?
is part of the Economic Development Committee plan.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were actually
So-
talking about the warrant article.
So we kind of backed into it backwards because we established a bylaw. And so now, like you said, the town said, yes, it exists, so we have no authority to change that.
Oh,
But we do have the authority to take a look at the policy that's attached to a new commission that's been formed. And so that's what I'm trying to do here. The issue I have is, I don't want any board or commission, or authority or department to apply for a grant and say, okay, we got it, but now the town is on the hook for the other half of it, unless it's gone through the Board of Selectmen first and the town administrator. And, we have to know what's going on at a town-wide basis, not on a departmental or commission level.
absolutely legitimate. And maybe when you're looking at the plan itself, you have to remember, this is over a period of 5 years. All right? The warrant article, what we actually passed, doesn't talk about the grants yet. It doesn't talk about the adoption of the actual mass statute. And so what the anticipation is that this agricultural commission will start by basically, just promoting agricultural-based economic opportunities in town, acting as mediators advocates, educators, and negotiators on farming issues, working for the preservation of prime agricultural lands, and advising the Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, Conservation Commission, Board of Health, Historic Commission, Board of Assessors, and the Open Space Committee, or any other appropriate town boards on issues involving agriculture and pursuing all initiatives appropriate to create and sustain an agricultural community.
Right, which is essentially the bylaw.
Yes, but, so we've taken the first step. Now, if this new agricultural advisory commission, so to speak, over the next year or two, really comes together and creates, you know, a phenomenal plan with the, you know, they always say the devil's in the details, and they say that they want to adopt the mass statute. Well, everything referenced in that plan is actually in that new mass general law statute that would give them that authority. But right now, that authority does not exist. All right? So as the Board of Selectmen discuss the Agricultural Commission 5 years from now, what it might look like, if that's one of your concerns about the grants, then modify it, edit it.
Well, I think,
That's what we have.
right, I think Jonathan's point is, we haven't accepted the plan, town, we being the town,
Yep.
or the selectmen even, but the town accepted the bylaw you put through to start the commission. And well, unless I'm going over fertile ground, no pun intended,
So you've.
if you
so-
put in for a
right.
grant, wait, if the agricultural commission puts in for a grant for 15,000, if the town matches 15,000, if this gets passed as written, we don't have any say over it, because the wording is the agricultural is the official representative of the town to go for grants, secure grants, apply, you know what I'm saying? So that'd be an impact on the budget that we can't have any control over, because we can't tell, for example, the agricultural commission, no, you can't apply for that because we don't have the money. And they can come back and all in good intention say, well, we don't care, we have the authority to do it. That's what I think the problem is. So we'd have to modify that paragraph or insert language that says, you know, either working in conjunction with the Board of Selectmen or working with the approved, because the part you read, where it says advising all those boards, but the next page, what Jonathan read, it clearly states that they'd be the official representative, which implies we, the administrator, would have no say over something that could potentially impact the budget.
So if the town adopts the state statute, you wouldn't have a say. And the Agricultural Commission would have to get the funds from the state. In that $15,000 example, that's actually what the farmer puts up. The town doesn't put up anything. The farmer just needs to put up.
Well, but there
That-
could be a grant, though, that says
There
town's
could be a
responsible.
grant, there could be a number of things. There could be a donation of property. See, right now, with this ag commission that we've set up, they don't have the authority to apply for grants. They don't have the authority to manage or accept lands. Now, if we accept the state statutes, which say within the next 5 years as part of the plan, they would have that authority. All right, now, if that's a concern when, in reviewing the whole 5-year plan, then that's why you modify it. But right now, what I guess what I'd like to make clear is there's the ultimate, what the Ag Commission should look like 5 years from now, and then there's what's actually been approved. And I don't want you to be confused with the Ag Commission that's been approved, how it stands today and what their mandate is versus what the end result is in the 5-year plan. Now, it is very possible that if you made no changes, that the Ag Commission 5 years from now could be a regulatory authority that has the you know, the decision-making ability.
Yeah, but they can't be autonomous if it's gonna impact the budget in a negative way. I think that's the end result, I think.
And that's why you have to look at that whole,
I'm sorry, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair. Is this seriously a statute that says you appoint agricultural commission and they have the authority to spend and grant and commit the town to a budget?
no,
John-
no. It's like
why
nothing that
anybody in their right mind
the
would
state
go
does.
for it?
It's never small. It's like 5 pages here.
No, too, because you also said, I don't wanna go over the five-page statute.
Exactly, yeah.
You also said something about the ability to accept land donations.
Yep.
And again, that would potentially negatively impact town's budget, because if they accept something that comes off the tax rolls and becomes classified
Well,
something else.
Well, the only thing that, the statute's pretty specific as far as what the land is, agricultural, APR, things along those lines.
Right. They could take something conceivably that's not APR, someone could donate it, taxable piece, make it an APR under the control of the Agricultural Commission, and the town would lose potential tax revenue, if I understand correctly. Not sure if that's accurate, but.
No, they could take, I think the next section you're talking about, Mr. Chairman, is you're either farming it and you're getting that 61A benefit, or you're not farming it, which is fine. I mean,
Right.
if you're not farming the land, you shouldn't get the tax benefit over your neighbor, right?
Well, no, absolutely, I would think
But
not.
if you are farming it, you're entitled to it, and, I mean, that's, I think, part of the goal of number 2 is to have a commission that oversees that, to make sure that there's assistance to help with farming, if, bringing the land up to spec and actually using it for its intended purpose, or not,
Yeah.
right? That seems like the intent of.
So what we've set up today, that is about to be filled, is an advisory board. And that's exactly what the purpose is information, come up with a plan. How can we help the farmers here? How can we build things? All right? If they say, or if they feel as a commission that they need enhanced powers, or enhanced abilities to do things, such as apply for grants on their own, that's where they would then petition that the town accept this statute, in which case you have to vote on it. It has to be approved at town meeting. All right, just like any other, when we accept, like, whether it's Board of Health or whatever. We're not even there yet. Now, it's very possible within the next 5 years, we will be at that point. We'll have an educated discussion on both of these. All right, but right now, it's the advisory commission.
Can you just do me a favor? If
Sure.
it's really like 5 years, can you just send me the results, because I probably won't be here. Somewhere else. I just want
Did
to
you
know
say
how
that
it
like
turns
10
out.
years ago?
Mr. Sigenovich,
I had a question for you.
Sure.
When you said manage and acquire land, the commission managing and acquiring land, does that mean Dudley is going to be in the business of farming now? The town's going to own a piece of property, raising cattle, selling eggs, whatever?
Well, that's a great question, Kerry, and I don't know the exact answer. And I think when it gets time to figure out if we're going to adopt the state statute, we should bring an expert in. But it says a commission may receive gifts, bequests, or devises of personal property or interest in real property as described in the subsection in the name of the municipality, subject to the approval of the city council or board of selectmen, as the case may be. The commission may purchase interest in land only, with funds available to the commission. A city council or town meeting may raise or transfer funds to that commission so that they may acquire it in the name of the municipality by option of purchase, lease, or whatever. My understanding is that one of the intents of this is that if you had a very strong agricultural commission and you had property that was not paying taxes, that was under APR, that agricultural commission could actually make an arrangement to have that piece actively worked. As long as it's getting the tax break. And if the owner of the land didn't want it worked and there was the ability to have it worked, they'd lose the tax break.
Who's working it?
Other farmers. The agricultural commission would be responsible for it.
so they would determine, like, for example, Kerry owns the land, but I'm a farmer. I could farm it like as a subcontractor to that person, like Mr.
But
Kibble
the
was here
agricultural
that time.
commission would act as,
Verify.
could set themselves up to be like brokers
But
where,
they would verify the land's being worked.
yeah,
You
exactly.
could come in and say, oh, I let someone do it, and someone else could, no, you're not, but they would have to go out and actually be the determining authority.
You know?
John has a question. Mr. Joseph is,
Yeah, so Mr. Joseph has chimed in from home, so I wanted to pass along his question, and what I think he would like to know a little more clearly, Greg, if any town, commission, or committee, et cetera, legally has the ability to cause indebtedness on behalf of the town without the board's permission.
The answer to that is no.
And the statute says that it has to be approved at town meeting and board of selectmen. Any
So-
purchase.
Two-step process.
Yeah.
So maybe the confusion, Mr. Chairman, and I think that you mentioned, Mr. Breyer, you have your schedule and you move forward and that's the way you act. This is so complex and confusing that there was just no time for us to even take this up before there was a warrant article presented. There are so many questions here that haven't been answered that I think we need to just dial this back and see how we can go forward with an understanding between your board and this board.
So what questions are not answered?
Why do we have an economic development plan that has a goal, a stated goal,
Of developing an agricultural commission?
with powers that almost mimic that Mass General Law 48, whatever the case may be, if we have no intention of doing that? Why is it even in the plan at this point? Isn't a plan like that a living document that we could?
Plans are always living documents, right? And you never fall in love with your own plan. So you say that we don't have any intention to move forward with this Mass General Law. By golly, I'm going to be pushing for it. I think it's a great law. I think it's about time that rather than, people giving farmers lip service, that they give them the tools they need to be successful in this day and age, in this economy. Dudley, almost a third of our land is agricultural. I mean, let's put farmers, let's just not give them lip service, let's give them the power and authority to influence their futures.
So maybe that's where I don't know enough to disagree with you. On its face, it looks like we're taking a few farming families from town,
50 plus.
50 plus. We're putting a few on this agricultural commission. We're giving them the ability to take tax money.
No, nope,
Or to spend money as they see fit.
Nope.
Outside, or under the authority of the town.
no, what was approved was an agricultural advisory commission to start, right? Baby steps, right? To do the homework, develop a farm plan, figure out what they need, what assets they need, what they need from the various departments. And if during this development of this commission and their mission in helping bring these dormant agricultural lands back, if they feel that they need this Mass General Law as one of their tools, well, that's available to them. They have to get it passed at town meeting and through the board here, but they may not need it. And I don't know the answer to that because I'm not a farmer. Only they know. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I think just because the bylaw, as you stated, we kind of get, I think the draft plan I haven't looked at in a while, it has language that's counter to it. I think might be where you might be getting wrapped around the axle a little bit, as am I. Just, like you said, it's a living document, and we'll be able to make changes to this, right?
Yep.
Okay.
But it has to be done through town meeting vote if it's,
Oh, no, not the
No,
plan.
not the 5-year plan.
Once it's
Five-year plan
accepted.
is, that's what I'm talking about. If there's changes, I think. I don't
This is
wanna
a
speak for
plan
you.
we're supposed to adopt, so we need to understand what we're adopting.
Yeah,
right, once it's accepted though through town meeting, any
And-
change has to be generated through town meeting.
right, and I think we had talked about having some, like a public hearing on this, just so we get people to come in and have input in that, so it's not just, there's other things, like you said, I'm not a farmer, you're not a farmer. There might be stuff we haven't heard of that should be in a plan, but at the same time, if there's an agreement on how it would work in practice, I guess that's what I would say.
And, Mr. Chairman, the plan itself doesn't have to be approved at town meeting, the 5-year plan. That's really just the Board of Selectmen adopting it. Now, you can adopt it with changes, you can vote against it. When we developed it, we had enough input out there to and we put timeframes on different things where we kind of figured out what the most important issues were, right? You got the mill, getting the dormant agricultural lands back going, trying to develop Lower Schofield, right, West Main Street. We're still plugging ahead with that. And again, because the Economic Development Committee serves at the pleasure of the board, if you feel we're moving too quick or we're going well outside the box, you gotta tell me where that box is, because I'm gonna just keep pushing.
As you should, John. Be fair, as you should.
Yeah.
Very,
I'll give you an idea of where I think the box is. I like number 4, I like number 3, I like number 2, the goals. The piece that's, like Mr. Ruda had said, the part about applying for grants, exclusive, what have you. And there's also a piece at the bottom of page 27 it says, "All Chapter 61A, APR, and any other agricultural use issue should be directed to the Agricultural Commission first." For what?
Because they should be the subject matter experts. They should, and so with that, so perfect time to clarify, right? So when something's directed, what is their duty, right? Maybe to research it and give the board their expert opinions on whatever that issue might be,
Okay.
That's how
all
I
right?
read
So
that.
just clarify, that's all.
That's how I read that, John.
Yeah.
I read it where it just like went off a cliff and there was
Oh,
no...
so, yeah.
That's how I read it.
Yeah, and you gotta remember too, a lot of this plan was written by lay people, so it's gotta be cleaned up, there's no doubt about that. You know, it's gotta be modified. At the end of the day, the more consensus we have behind the plan, there's a lot of independent elected boards in town. They don't have to follow the plan. They technically don't, but it'd be nice if everybody did, and everyone marched to the same kind of end goals.
So Greg, a budgetary question scenario. If the agricultural commission, just say they come forward with a number to fund their committee, and we'll just pick a round number, 50,000, just for whatever reason, I'm picking that number. Board of Selectmen say, we don't think that's reasonable or proper, or we can't afford it. In theory, you can still go to town meeting, because it'll be in the budget as presented, we may negatively line item, and they can get that budget adopted, and then the burden falls upon us to find that 50,000.
Exactly.
It has to come from other revenues already.
We have to present a balanced budget, so no matter what we do, we leave that town meeting with a balanced budget. If it means we have to change revenues or we have to assign costs differently, we do that.
Right, it has happened before, we made a recommendation on a line item, and
Yep.
somebody's gotten up and said, no, I want it restored, it's passed, then everybody high fives and walks out, and then it's up to you and us.
Well, I wouldn't, as I'm here, we won't let that happen because we have to leave town meeting with a balanced.
No, but we will be balanced, because we have to fund the money from somewhere
Yeah,
else
but we
in order
go
to
into
balance.
town meeting with a revenue plan, so the revenue plan to the dollar anticipates what we're gonna have for revenues. I mean, I don't know how it was done before I came, Sally, it's, we gotta kinda stick to the revenue plan.
Right.
So if we go $50,000 over the revenue plan, we have to identify the source of those funds for, say, the extra 50,000.
So, Mr. Chairman, what's the difference between the Economic Development Committee or any other committee and, for instance, the Agricultural Commission? The Economic Development Committee was established by a bylaw the same way as the Ag Commission. I have a budget of $100 a year. I mean, I guess technically anybody who's a committee head, right, could go and on town floor and say, I'd like 5,000 or 10,000 more.
It happens, we've had it happen.
Yeah. But I think if you really look at this Ag Commission, there's not gonna be a lot of money spent. Really, what we're getting, we're benefiting from the brain power of people that have a vested interest in a lifetime, education
So-
in agriculture.
I don't think anyone's against the concept.
Why don't we do this? This seems to be the hang-up, and anybody on the board, Mr. Chairman, stop me if I'm wrong. The one hang-up seems to be on page 28, the top paragraph that begins the Agricultural Commission will and ends with Dudley, right? That's the hang-up. Authority to apply for and secure grants and funding. Other than that, I mean, that's the primary hang-up with this document at this point.
Yeah, well, that section.
That section.
If that could be reworded,
Why don't we for tonight, accept this portion of the plan and strike that paragraph, and we can, it's a living document.
That's
we can
perfect,
take it-
yeah.
We can work from there.
That
We can work
absolutely
from there.
works.
because the goals are, like Kerry said, Mr. Chairman, we want to see.
Right, there's
It's
no opposition
straightforward.
to
Yeah,
the stated
that-
goals,
that's-
it's just that we
that
don't
works.
understand enough about this. to-
Although you did not add anything in on goal 4 about hops. Line.
Yeah, that's true, because, because remember, when you talked about the use of the mill,
It's a living document,
there
we'll
were
get there.
hops, talked about, so.
Well, I mean, the other great news is the U.S. Congress is about to legalize the farming of hemp outside of the marijuana laws.
Does that seem-
It's a bill actually going through
that the right to
Congress right
farm
now.
thing?
It's going to be done on a federal level where any farmer is gonna be able to soon grow hemp. because it doesn't have, I guess, THC, whatever it is, in marijuana, which makes sense, because hemp is a great industrial,
Right.
it's a great,
Fiber.
material for fiber. I mean, so this could present an enormous opportunity for some of our farms here in town, too. And it won't interfere with any of the marijuana licenses and everything else. I think the timing's perfect. And the response to the forum on Saturday coming up has been really positive, and I would really encourage you that if you can make it on Saturday between, 1 and 3 at the Dudley Grange, just come, talk, listen. I think this is gonna be one of the more exciting, committees that we have in town for a while, and again, a lot of them this is gonna be their first time involved with any kind of government, so the more coaching you can give them and guidance, the better.
I know, speaking for myself, I work on Saturday, so I can't make it, but I certainly encourage anybody, board and outside the board, to please attend and bring your input to the table. So you want to make a motion, Jonathan?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that the board accept page 28, page 27, 28, and 29 of the proposed economic development plan 2018 with the following deletion. On page 28, delete, the Agricultural Commission will be the official representative of the town of Dudley to the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources and be empowered with such authority to apply for and secure grants and funding as related to agricultural land issues and agricultural training in the town of Dudley.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. I'd just like to add a comment to try to rework that paragraph at some point. Use Greg as a resource, yourself as where it includes oversight of this board as like so-called final say.
Financial matters.
Right, well, act on the recommendations of, just work on the language with Greg and tighten it up, and can probably reinsert something at some point.
So maybe I finish my motion at the end of the motion, and this deletion will not prohibit the Agricultural Commission from seeking the advice of the Board of Selectmen or Town Administrator for applying for any grants,
Is
agriculture.
that good with the second?
Oh, that's even better than the first
Until we
one.
get a chance to figure it out, it doesn't hold anything up.
Got it, Michelle?
Because if there's a grant for 100 grand for something and we don't have to do anything, well, I don't want to hold that up.
Right.
All right.
We're all part of the same team.
Yeah, right.
There's no team.
Yeah.
It's,
Nice and move.
Motion made and seconded again by Mr. Sigenovich. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
aye.
Unanimous. John, thank
All right,
you.
so, Mr. Chairman, now that that passed, I just want to make sure, right, what was approved, I don't believe conflicts with what you just said, right? So the warrant article said this board will be the lead board for the town of Dudley in its interaction and communications with Mass Department of Agricultural Resources. That's fine, right?
Because they just don't have statutory authority to
Exactly.
finalize.
Right.
Right. And that's
So,
the-
but they can still,
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I
We can't
mean,
commit us to anything unless it's.
You got it.
Yeah, they open up channels of communication and I think we all want to get to the spot, like Kerry just said, if there's a grant available, for example, that has no matching funds requirement, we don't want to tie anybody's hands that they can't apply.
yeah,
But if it had matching fund requirements, we need to know because it can be negative,
absolutely agree.
and the paperwork can be started and submitted, and Greg can, well, up until May, can sign off on it, and then whomever we have after would just have to hit the ground running, and I'm sure you would make sure he or she is running in the right direction.
Yeah. And as you go through the plan, the Economic Development Committee does meet the third Tuesday of every month. So if you have questions as you go through, even individually, send them over to us, and we'll take them up at our meeting and try to get you the answers that you're looking for if we can.
Thanks, John.
Michelle, thanks again for your help in those letters.
It's always good to see John.
Thank you, John, as always.
Next up, student rep Bailey Bowes, who had a birthday, I think, since the meeting started, as Mr. Joseph would say.
Meaning it's a long meeting.
Yes. All right, so since the last meeting, the football team won on Thanksgiving Eve. 35-34 is quite a good game. There was a pep rally that day at school coordinated by the student council. winter sports have started since it's after Thanksgiving. The boys basketball team first game is this Friday at 7 o'clock, and the girls' first one is at Tuesday at Holy Name. And winter track's first meet is this upcoming Saturday. And the show choir's holiday spectacular is Friday and Saturday.
Probably sold out already, right?
Probably.
Probably. If not, you have to go see it. That is quite a show.
It is.
Nothing on grades or?
Grades for progress reports ended Friday.
How about any early acceptance action letters for anybody on college?
Me, Plymouth State.
Congratulations.
Saw that. Awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Any questions for the student rep? Accept his report as presented. Thank you. Board member comments. Mr. Sigenovich.
At this time, I have nothing.
Mr. Marcy.
This time I have none as well.
Mr. Ruda.
I'm good.
I just want to, once again, on behalf of the board and the town, obviously publicly thank Michelle, our administrative assistant, who does not encompass what she does, what her and her elves pulled off for the holiday spectacular. Thanks to the fire chief for providing Santa with transportation. Once again, bigger and better than last year. I don't know how you top it every year, but do a great job and certainly well appreciated, well attended. Do you have a number on how many people? Nothing official? Yeah, it was a nice night though, too, right? But no, we certainly appreciate it. Departmental chair, heads. Virgil? Chief? Fire and EMS Chief, Dean Kochanowski.
So, over the past few weeks, you see the construction's been ramping up for the fire station. Michelle and Greg have gotten a couple complaints about snow and the fence and the drapes over the fence, and I understand their concerns. We're doing the best we can to keep it safe, but it's a very compact area with a lot of equipment. We're doing the best we can, but unfortunately, the law requires that they have the fence with the drapes. And the ridiculous thing they got going around the whole station there, the booms.
Right.
I mean, we don't like it either, but it's required. If they get caught without it, they get fined, which ends up costing us more money. We're doing the best we can. I'm just asking the people to be patient with us. It's a temporary thing. The outcome is gonna be better for everybody. Just gonna be a few months that it's a little bit tough there. I know people are concerned about blind spots and everything. I would just ask that people walking by there and running pay a little bit more attention. We're doing the best we can, we honestly are. As far as the snow, there's only one place to put it, and that's in the corner by the light pole on the corner of Mason and West Main Street. I've talked with Vinnie, I talked with the foreman as well. They can truck it out of there after the storm's over, which they're willing to do. I mean, but there might be a short period of time where there's snow piled there, especially if there's a big storm, and I'm sure we're gonna get a couple come January, February. I hope not, but like I said, we're doing the best we can with a limited amount of space, and I'm just asking people to be patient with us. We're trying to keep it as safe as possible.
I think that's the key, everybody. Just bear with us. In 6 months, it's gonna be an entirely different area. It's gonna, like you said, it's gonna be a good for the town. It's a good long-term investment. Drive anywhere you want. You see booms everywhere. You see the hay bales rolled up.
I mean, I'll be honest, I don't agree. I think it's overkill too, but the law's the law. I can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah, but like you said, not having them creates a fine. If it creates an issue, it creates a fine, so. Thanks, Chief.
Yep.
Craig, did you have something else you wanted to add on your report? Oh, I thought you said, Chief Wayner. Could have sworn he said no when I asked him the first time.
Yeah, just one quick thing I thought of. Next Saturday, the 15th, we'll be doing the Good for Guns buyback through UMass Hospital. Says if people have any firearms or things that they want to get rid of, they're more than welcome to bring them down, and you get the gift cards to Park and Shop, I believe, in exchange. And also, I think they're giving away gun locks and those types of things, and they have other folks on hand to provide information. So that'll be on the 15th, I believe, from 9 to 1.
Yeah.
here, right down the station. Thank you.
Thanks, chief. George, water sewer?
Yeah, real quickly, we're just finishing up our hydrant flushing program, so that's come to an end. Now we're getting into our leak detection program, which started, so far so good. Both departments are trying to wrap up things right now, get them winter tight before any storms come.
How'd you do on your last couple breaks? You've been pretty quiet the last couple weeks
It
since
has been
those?
quiet. I think we took care of all the leaks that he was gonna come and listen for, so, looks like that. So we're not wishing for any more right now, so everything's all set.
Thanks, George. Greg, do you have anything else you want to add in your report?
No, sir.
Michelle, anything you want to add? Adjournment.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn this evening. Oh, no, we actually got executive.
Adjourn into,
All right.
what we gonna do with roll call?
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move that we move into executive session, would have a joint meeting with the planning board, convene into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, subsection 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and chair so declares,
Not to reconvene.
and not to reconvene in public session.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote.
John Reed, aye.
John Marcy, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Carrie Sigenovich, aye.
So moved. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Pearl Harbor Day, coming up.
Not today, though.
Nope, not today.